Hello and welcome to Live the African Dream podcast. My name is Eunice Ajim. I'm your host, and today we have Tunji, Oke and Diana Teoh. They are both colleagues at GetFundedAfrica. Tunji is the co-founder and director of business development, and Diana is the head of investor relations. GetFundedAfrica is a platform that is leveraging artificial intelligence to match innovative African startups to global investors. Tunji and Diana, it's so great to have you both on the podcast.
Thank you, Eunice. Eunice is a friend of the house. Grateful to be here.
Definitely.
Thanks very much, Eunice. Thanks for the invitation. To be part of this amazing podcast.
Definitely. So we're gonna just go right into it. So Tunji, we've known each other probably since like earlier this year. And I've seen the growth of GetFundedAfrica and some of the amazing things that you guys have been doing lately. So just, as a starting point, what was the inspiration behind GetFundedAfrica?
Okay, so like you mentioned, co-founder of GetFundedAfrica, my partner and fellow co-founder, his name is Debola, and we've actually known each other since high school or secondary school. Right, and when we became a bit older, working class, we used to have these chats, and there was just something, between both of us that made us realize that sometime sooner than later, we would end up doing some business together. Right, so a couple of years later, that eventually started, and then we ran this market and research company called Afriscaper, right, and that went well for some time, but in terms of actually making a difference, right, that search was on for us. We were thinking of how could we be on the cutting edge or the frontier of a growth area in terms of, based on our background and based on our working experience, finance, accounting. He's a chartered accountant. I have an MSc in financial management. We both started our careers originally in banking. And he ended up in a startup. It's a very large startup called US, right? And I was in private equity at that time as well, right? So we thought, how can we make a difference? And then the startup scene, even just over 3 years ago, still growing compared to now. And we said, okay, you know what? Let's do this. So in terms of the birth of GetFundedAfrica, not too many people know this. It was one guy in West Africa, right, and another guy, because my co-founder was based in China then, US, another guy in China, and we opened up an Excel spreadsheet. So there was no templates, there was no. We started GetFundedAfrica from standing start. It was the ideas, the conversations, a blank Excel sheet, in December 2019, and here we are.
That is awesome. Actually, that's the way to go. Like, that's how you get started. People just think, oh, I have an idea and I'm a millionaire. No, it never happens that way, right?
Nope.
But actually, I wanna dig a little bit just further into that, that particular story. Like, what was the realization of like, hey, Africa is growing, the startup scene is amazing, let's go ahead and launch GetFundedAfrica. Like, what was the thought process and when was that aha moment?
Okay, so once again, I don't know if I look younger than I am or older than I actually am. We looked at our careers and we looked at, what are we strong at, and it had to do with financial services. Like I mentioned earlier, we were looking for where we could actually, make a difference. It's fun, it's good to make money, right? But it's also good to make money by helping people. I think individually and collectively, both of us, and even as a company, people like Diana as well, there's this, there's really something from getting paid and you make somebody else smile, right? So we looked at financial services in Africa, like I said, it's a Pan-African company, financial services in Africa, and we said, okay, what are the opportunities, especially in terms of where we can apply technology and where we can clearly make a difference. We are very particular about making a difference. We're not noisemakers, right? We don't like attention, right? But we do like to, genuinely solve problems. And we looked at the startup scene and said, okay, there's definitely growth. A lot of interest seems to be coming into this area. There's a lot of creativity involved. A lot of young Africans seem to be getting involved in this space as well. And of course, being in private equity and they were also raising a lot of money for KaiUS, we already had that experience, right? Realizing that, private capital from global investors was coming into certain types of companies, especially those that were using technology to scale, right? So we just looked at it and said, all right, what can we do here? In what part of this space can we actually play, right? So initially, we're still doing that. We leverage media, of course, a research background, financial services, and we've sort of evolved into, and I think I don't know if we'll talk about that a bit later, what we call a venture service platform, right? But pretty much that's how we identified the opportunity, high growth, in terms of, as you know, you are a VC and of African origin as well. In terms of the funding gap for startups and for SMEs, there's a lot of data out there, but it doesn't even scratch the surface. There's a huge need. For me, when I'm talking to startups, I always say, what's the starting point to know if you have an idea that you can validate as a startup, right? You have to solve a problem. Identify a problem that was there yesterday, it's there today, and it's going to be there tomorrow, and affects potentially a very large group of people or a large market when you want to circle your business around that, and there you have it. So that's what we did in terms of how can we help the startups, how can we increase the equity, and even debt is another exciting space that resource that is becoming available to startups as well. How can we participate in this? How can we help SMEs and startups in Africa? And yeah, that's how we eventually ended up as a venture service platform.
Okay, awesome. So I know you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but it's something that even myself, like when we had early in our early days conversation, I was like, is GetFundedAfrica a VC fund? Is it a startup? Is it a venture studio? Is it an accelerator program? Like, please tell us exactly what does GetFundedAfrica do, and how, like, what is your part in the African ecosystem?
Okay, so as I said, we're a venture service platform. To simplify things, you can look at us as a marketplace, the three-sided marketplace for startups, for investors, and for corporates. All three stakeholders, you could say, have different needs, right? All three sides of this marketplace do not have a particular platform where they can converge and create partnerships. The startups are obviously looking for funding. The corporates are looking for partners for relationships with startups that can help them to increase revenue, reduce costs, improve their operational efficiency, and even as investment options. And of course, the investors, whether it's locally in terms of Africa, from different parts of the world, are looking for what we call curated deal flow. Curated deal flow, you need to know exactly what I mean. You receive 20 pitch decks in a day. You want a situation where it's these five that are a close as possible match to the investment criteria of Action Capital. So that's the platform that we have created, in that we want to be able to solve these headaches, right, for these three stakeholders on the platform. And of course,
awesome.
We leverage a lot of media, we leverage a lot of data as well. We're very, very active in these other parts as well. Yeah.
No, I mean, that's beautiful. I mean, that's the way to go. I think that's something that a lot of VC funds, right, want to accomplish. But it takes a lot of work to be able to connect startups and corporates and investors, right? It's a different kind of ball game. So then I'm going to go a little bit to you. I think Tunji has mentioned a little bit what GetFundedAfrica does. I just want to better understand, like, what type of startups do you have in your pipeline, and how do you work with these companies? Like, what does that process look like?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So currently we actually have like a wide range of verticals that we focus on, right? So we are actually a vertical agnostic company. So from, the general fintech that are doing like microfinance to blockchain, we have a number of very strong agri-tech companies as well. Mobility, marketplace, e-commerce, health tech, just a wide range of it. I would say they are, in a nutshell, we have like a very strong companies in our portfolios at this point in time. So the aim is to actually bring promising SMEs up to speed, to be honest, in their fundraising aspect, so that they are investor ready before pitching to investors. And at the same time to guide them so that they can avoid making those common mistakes that early stage founders usually make when they are actively fundraising. So what we do is that to handhold them to be investor readiness.
Awesome. Oh, that's great. That's great. So, Tunji, I'm going to go back a little bit to you for a minute. So, now that we have a better understanding of what GetFundedAfrica does and the kind of companies that you guys work with, I'm just curious, like, what is your business model? How do you guys actually make money?
Okay, so for us, we make money mostly, and without going into too much detail, right? We so we make money mostly from the corporates and from the startups. We believe that for the work that we do, we should get a small fee. So like from the startups, for instance, for any money that we're able to raise, we take a very, very, very small success fee. Right, and then for our other services like in venture building and the rest, we take a subscription fee as well. In terms of the corporates, that comes in different forms, right? For instance, we run accelerator programs for them where we converge or aggregate startups, like I mentioned earlier, can actually provide the type of services or solutions that they're looking for. And for this also, we charge a very, very small fee. For investors, right, like you this, if you don't pay us, do you? So in terms of the platform, for investors, it's more of a freemium model for them. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Awesome. So I actually had a question for you, Diana, that I missed when I asked your question earlier. So you do investors relation at GetFundedAfrica, and I think I mentioned this to you earlier. I was like, it's one of those roles that a lot of people don't really know or are familiar, right? Like everybody knows associate, principal, partner. But investor relation is actually like a big role. So just for the audience and for anybody out there, what does that role entails, right? And what will be your advice for anybody trying to get into VC through the investor relations path?
So the first part of the question is that my role as an investor relations, I would say, is a combination of finance, communication, and also marketing. So it's mainly just to make sure that there's a smooth, effective communication happens between like internal stakeholders, which is our team, the startups, and our investors. So although the most common understanding about investor relation is that we will scout for investors, we'll talk to investors, we'll maintain and build the relationship with investors. But mainly what we do, it varies from companies to companies, I would say. In addition to scouting and building relationships as a head of investor, I also actually do have to do a lot of like due diligence on startups, just to make sure checking on their term sheets, cap table, making sure that they have a smooth onboarding onto the program itself. So, that's basically in a nutshell. Of course, it will evolve, throughout the period of my role within the company as an investor relation. It depends on the needs as well. So that's what I'm doing at the moment at this point in time. However, the second part of the question is that how do you get in? I guess, I would say foundational of if you have a finance background, that would be definitely very beneficial as a start. If you don't, I would say like perhaps try to get in as an intern for some of the people if you want to start to get into VC. The best way is to build connections with the ecosystem, with people in the ecosystem itself, whether it be startups, whether it be investors, whether it be people who are currently actually working in a VC. There's many ways that when you start off working in the VC, it doesn't have to be an investor relation. You can do other roles within the company, but then you can progress through it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Tunji, right back at you. So I think this podcast is all about live the African dream, right? And as cheesy as that sound, it just feel like it's super easy, right? Like, oh, I built Get Funded Africa, and now we're this amazing companies connecting startups and corporates and investors, and like we are doing great, right? But we all know that the line is not straight. It comes with some challenges, it comes with some successes and failures. I want to know throughout this journey, right? Like, what has been like any challenge that you've overcome, and have you had events where you've had to pivot maybe your business model or something within the organization to get you to the next level?
So I would say the last part of your statement, all of the above. So when we created GetFunded Africa, I would say it was.
Why are you scratching your head, Tunji?
I'm thinking back, memories. So I would say that initially we could have termed ourselves as an SME. However, right now we are actually a proper startup that is trying to leverage technology. Right. So in terms of pivoting, so what is normal service? When we're talking to startups, I'm talking about fundraise, adjust business model. We've actually gone through all that. We've actually raised money ourselves from our investors, such as Orbit Startups and Odvad VC, our major investors. So we've been in the trenches, right? So when we're talking to startups, we know exactly what we're talking about. The difficulties and the complexities of due diligence, having to be flexible, having to be sensitive to those that you'll be identified as your customers, are they actually going to pay for these products and services, right? So like I said, initially we could have been termed an SME, but over time, right, we've had to change. I remember in 2020, for instance, when the idea was relatively still new after a couple of months, a couple of angels and one or two institutions actually said, oh, so you guys are going to run your fund, we'll be LPs to you. And we're like, okay. We didn't ask, we were offered, right? And it was conversation. You have a structure in place, ready to put funding in your position, you serve as general partners and just become a proper VC, right? But because for us, the underlying reason why we got into this was to help startups and to an extent SMEs to get funding, right? And also we wanted to work with as many companies and as many stakeholders as possible. And we just felt that if we became VCs, because as you know, Eunice, the fiduciary responsibility to your LPs, it's a lot of work, and you have to actually focus on that, right?
Yeah.
It's very, very sensitive position to be in. So we said, maybe down the line, right? But for now, we want, we tell startups, have your crazy dreams steeped in reality. And for us, it's over the next, it was 5 years from last year, so that'll be about 4 years. We want to have relationships with about 50 to 100 African startups that have a valuation of between $50 million to $100 million. And if we just focus on the VC part of our business, then probably won't be able to have that kind of relationship. I don't know about you as a core VC, person sitting on money, but for us and Diana, it's fun. It's fun. Yeah, it's fun doing everything that we do. Our business is fundamentally grouped around 6 major problems that we identified that startups and SMEs in Africa face. Business know-how, platforms to tell their stories, that's media, obviously access to funding, access to talents and such. And the way we've structured ourselves internally and even externally to our audience and customers, right? We try to solve these problems for them by running a platform, right, which serves as a venture service marketplace. So yeah, we've done we've done a lot of pivoting. We've become a startup ourselves. We raise funding for ourselves. We pitch to investors. Yeah. So when we're talking to startups, we know exactly what we are talking about because we have been there and we're still living that experience as well.
Yeah, I mean, I completely get it. I think it's always so funny when investors or people try to come and tell startup how they should be running their business, but they've never run businesses themselves, right?
You've been in the trenches. You've been in the
So,
trenches as well. You've been in the trenches as well. Yeah.
yeah, way too many times. So I know the ups and downs. So when people see me today, I'm like, I'm a hustler. You know what I mean? Like, I will push through the walls to get where I need to
Find a
be.
way. Yeah, find a way. Find a way. Find a way. That's the mantra. Find a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, quick question for you, Diana. I know you guys work with corporates. We've mentioned it several times throughout this podcast. I'm just curious, like, how does that engagement looks like? Is it? I see one of them could be potentially through an accelerator program, but what are the offers to the corporates? Why would they come to GetFunded Africa?
So it's a very interesting concept about corporate accelerator program. I believe that every large corporation should actually adopt corporate accelerator program within the organization. So it can really massively help to spark like internal innovation, actually, like, from the thinking perspective for their own team. And at the same time also, especially when corporates are actually looking for solutions that they wanted to solve problems, whether it's products for their clients or even internally, things that they are, solutions that they are looking for to solve internally within the teams itself. So for us is that, there are many types of corporate accelerator programs targeted for different purposes. It can be whether you have like a solution that you wanted to solve, but because of internal process complexity, it is very hard to come up with a very innovative solution, or your team just don't have that knowledge to actually do that. So one of the just an example is that one of the ways to do that is like to run a pilot accelerator program. Some of the companies, which is very common for most of them, is to sort of like, if you have a problem to solve, you invite startups within the same industry to apply and pitch sort of like a mini demo day for them to actually like, say, hey, this is my solution, would you be interested? So from our perspective is that we will be able to actually gather all these startups, because we have a pool of startups, we have the network of startups, pan-Africa, so we'll be able to actually have wider outreach compared to the corporate itself, that we can tap into these markets, these people, these founders, and to say that, hey, we have a corporate partner that is looking to solve this problem. Since you are within this industry, would you like to assist them? Would you like to sell your products, or at least pitch to them to see whether they would be interested? Potentially, it might lead to either investing in them, acquiring them, or even just partnerships, right? So that would be a win-win for both parties in the end of the day.
No, I mean, that's so beautifully made or put, because, and I've seen that a lot. There's a lot of big corporations coming from the US trying to enter the African market, like, what is your point of entry? And I think startups are definitely like a huge jump where you don't have to start from scratch, which is great. So I know GetFundedAfrica recently established a big partnership with Microsoft with the intention of making funding even more accessible for founders. Tunji, would you like to speak a little bit more about that?
Okay, so we for Microsoft, as regards the continent of Africa, they are genuinely committed to SMEs and to startups. They are genuinely committed to moving hundreds of thousands of SMEs and startups to the next level, right? And they've put their best foot forward. Microsoft is highly involved in terms of how they can also position startups to grow. That is also very, very key, using Microsoft technology as a backbone. But it's not just confined to that. What we do for them primarily, right, is to take startups that are coming from Microsoft recommended accelerators, and we run them through something called a fundraising program, not an accelerator program, a fundraising program, which Diana so graciously runs for us. So we run these in cohorts, like batches of startups, where we take them through, the necessary elements of investor readiness. Right? And then at the end of the program, we actually get funding from them through the network that Diana mentioned, vast network of VCs just like you. So that primarily is relationship that we have with Microsoft. They are, once again, like I said earlier, there's a lot of mouth service out there, but in the case of Microsoft, that is just far from the case. They're committed to the continent. They're doing a lot. They're thinking of the future, but they're acting right now.
I love that statement. So beautifully well and so beautifully put together. So Diana, I have one last question for you. I think, did you mention that you were based in Malaysia? Is that correct? Amazing. And you're working with a company out of Nigeria, which is even better, right? One question that I have for you is just, like, what would you say have been the biggest lessons learned working with a company like GetFunded?
I would say, the team has been really amazing. But it's more of, because I work remotely, right? As you mentioned, they are based in Nigeria and I'm based in Malaysia. So I'm actually 100% remote. So I would say mainly setting boundaries for myself and also for my team. Just to make sure that we are all communicating, and aligned in the sense of that what we really want to achieve for the mission of GetFundedAfrica, because we need to always stay in the same direction. We shouldn't be losing track in terms of what we wanted to achieve in GetFundedAfrica. So I would say, between all the busy schedules, taking some time out, learning from the team. I would say the team are very experienced and I've been learning so much from them, to be honest. And also at the same time, because I'm new to the African market, by working in GetFundedAfrica itself, I actually managed to expose a lot of knowledge in the African startup ecosystem.
Awesome, awesome.
So, Diana,
this is always
we expect Diana to say that tomorrow and on Monday and on Tuesday, not just because we're here. It's in front of people.
I know, right? I mean, she seems to be enjoying. So, like, you got a good one. And I'm just like, Tunji, you guys have been growing like crazy. I think when I spoke to you earlier this year, you were a few employees. It seems like you guys have at least double, right?
22 different parts of Africa.
Right.
Because, so we chose, if I may add, yes, I am in Nigeria, right? When we created GetFundedAfrica, we talked about, we had to have a base in Africa, somewhere in Africa, right?
Yeah.
Because we're a Pan-African company. So we looked at different locations, but we settled on a place called Abeokuta in Nigeria, right? And we work out of a place called the Ogun State Tech Hub. We have a partnership with the state government here, right? And the partnership is premised on the fact that we are attracting startups, not just from Nigeria or from West Africa, but the whole of Africa. That is actually the plan that we have. The tech hub the tech hub and the resources that the state government have provided is going to make, in terms of ease of business for startups that are coming here, is going to provide them with facilities, access to talent, even that community of startups. It's available to anybody that comes to work out of the BC Tech Hub. And also, we have investors like you that we've told you, Eunice. Investors come to visit our offices, come to visit Tech Hub, and then we have a quick fireside chat. It's an entire experience. It's a very laid-back state. There, for people like Diana and I, there are lots of places to go hiking. It's just a wonderful place to work, right? And a wonderful place to actually play as well.
Are you saying that next time I'm in Nigeria, I gotta come to, how do you call it?
Ogun State, most deaf.
Ogun State. Awesome. Well, I always love to end the podcast with, again, really the big reason why I'm doing this is because, we all want to see not just the future, but like baby steps, right, that we're taking today. So Tunji, right, like what are your dreams for not just the African startup space, but also just Africa as a whole?
Okay, I mentioned that Diana and I like to hike, as a hobby. Earlier in the year, I was in a very, very remote area of Nigeria called Erin-Ijesha. You can Google it. It's a beautiful set, hills and 7 waterfalls, right in the middle of nowhere. When I mean right in the middle of nowhere, right in the middle of nowhere. Right? Very accessible by road, but right in the middle of nowhere. And when it was time to, because there's a small sense of organization, small facility, you get your guides to go on the hikes and go into the hills and all that. And when it came to, facilitating our entry, we had to pay, right? And remember I said it's right in the middle of nowhere in a rural area. And the guy who was attending to us whips out a POS machine. And it was a POS machine that had been placed there by a fintech. Who knows,
Wow.
maybe the owner, the person, the founder of that fintech is somewhere in the States with you or somewhere in Mali. What I'm saying is that talking to people, people who are outside our space, three of us, is when they hear startup, they're underestimating the value, the presence, and the impact so far. So to me, that's a wonderful story of how far they have gone. And as we know in Africa, they're scratching the surface, and how far they can go. If in the most remote part of Nigeria, payments are being made via technology, I know it's like you said cliche, but the sky is the limit. So for us, right,
Yeah.
we are seeing the growth year on year. The projections this year is towards 10 billion. We publish an ecosystem funding report that tracks activity around the continent, and our report for 2021, Ines, I believe you have a copy, and you were so gracious to have attended the launch of that report in March. It was about 4.15 billion. So let's just say between 4 and 5 billion reported activity in terms of equity investments in Africa, and the projections are for 10 billion. We want a situation where we have 1-2 unicorns coming out of Africa over the next 5 years, and I don't see any reason why not. And also, like I said, we are here at the Tech Hub in Ogun State. We are genuinely in partnership with the government to develop this state, this Tech Hub, and other locations within the state as innovation and technology hubs. We want big business here. We want people to come here, be comfortable. So if we can do that here, there's no reason why it can't be done in Senegal, in Ghana, in, of course, Cameroon, in Congo. We're all involved.
Yeah.
We're all involved in this. We have pushed boundaries over the last few years. Let's just continue to grow.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, thank you so much, Tunji and Diana, for joining us on the Live the African Dream podcast. It was such a pleasure having you both.